deploy anything, you are supposed to create all the infra required. So I'll just write it as infra. It is infrastructure. So that will be using Terraform to create the infra. Okay. So unless you have the infrastructure ready, you cannot do the application deployment. For example, you buy a phone. If your phone is not switched on, if your phone is not working, you cannot access any application, right? Similarly, unless you have the infrastructure created with the necessary compute, network, database, all the resources, it will not be accessible for you. So the first thing a DevOps engineer will do is the infra creation using Terraform or manually or using Ansible or any other infrastructure as code tool. Then only the deployment starts. Deployment is equivalent to upgrading your existing Play Store application or installing a new Play Store application. Okay, any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a doubt. So, like, if we are providing the infra during the deployment stage, uh, don't we need infrastructure for the coding stage as well?
Yeah, that's a good
So,
question. Thing is, for the developers,
hmm,
usually they just go with their laptops for
okay.
the unit testing and all. But
Hmm.
ultimately, they cannot release the product and say that the build is ready for testing until unless they do it on the dev environment, dev official environment. That has to be anyways created by the infra team. So pretty much they'll be involved creating that infra during the development phase itself. But the amount of work they do or the percentage they get involved is little less compared to the CD part.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. So any idea, anybody can just give a little brief of what is operate? Atulya, you are in the operations, SRE.
Mainly operations like maintaining the systems and user experience, as well as uh, the system stability, like that. So
Correct.
whenever there is a deployment or anything, or any issues happening, we need to maintain the system. After deployment, after deployment, before deployment also we do this.
Exactly. So thing is, unless you work on the particular application or access the application or do something on the application, it is not called operate, right? Unless you do something on the application, it is not an operation. So operation is something customer does. At the same time, operations team uh, from the organization, right? They look at how it is behaving. What is the CPU utilization? What is the memory utilization? How the application is behaving? Whether it is slow, it is fast enough. What is the response time? Is there any security bugs and things like that? So customer operates the application, and we look at how the application is behaving. That is what is the operations team responsibility. It could be something related to the incidents that are happening. It could be related to the performance issue. It could be related to some security issue, or it could be related to any other functionality issue. So operation and monitoring are pretty much connected, and without monitoring, you cannot really be in the operations team. So you have to be pretty much uh, aware of what are the different monitoring tools, what are the different parameters that you need to monitor, like system utilization, CPU utilization, the same thing. I mean, system metrics you should be aware of, and application metrics also you should be aware of. How many logins happening, how many logins failed, how many new registration done today, how many failed registrations. So, so many things you need to do monitoring. Then you create a feedback or write a feedback about what has happened. and go for a plan once again. So these are the different tools being used for monitoring. In fact, I mean, you have hell lot of tools for monitoring. One of the built-in tools in AWS is CloudWatch. Okay, any questions so far? I'll move on to the next slide.
No. Shankar, I started recording the session,
I already started, I guess.
but it wasn't showing, so I started.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. And one question I have is this monitoring tool, no? The Grafana, is that the one which most of the company use?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
For mostly dashboards and visualization, mostly for the visualization.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In our course, in our DevOps course, we'll be mostly looking into only these set of tools because see, there are multiple tools available. There are n number of tools available. It is very difficult to cover all the tools. In fact, I mean, not even we cannot see some of the introduction also if we want to see all the tools. But we'll do a deep dive onto these tools like Git, GitLab, Terraform, Docker Kubernetes, Grafana CloudWatch, and in fact AWS resources. So yesterday we saw about SSH key creation, SSH key where it is being stored, and we also looked at what are the different operations in AWS CLI. What are the two major operations that we do on the console or from the command line?
Read.
Read and write, right? So write is all about creating, modifying, deleting, and updating the resources. It means you're doing something on the resources. So what are the different read operations? It could be describe. Describe means, I mean, you're trying to get the description of all the resources. Sometimes you want to just list only few resources. Sometimes you want to get some particular resource. So these are all read operations, example read operations. So we'll take a look into different read operations as well. Also, we looked at where the configuration information is stored for AWS CLI. .aws is a folder which is a hidden folder for AWS application or AWS software, AWS CLI software. So we have a config file which is having the configuration information. The credentials files will have the access key and secret key. Accordingly, you will have a .ssh folder in your home directory that is for your SSH related configuration, your private key and public key. So where exactly the .git folder will come? Any idea? .git? Any guesses?
Is it in the root?
No. See, it depends on where you create your or initialize your repository. Wherever you initialize your repository, in that repository, there will be .git folder. For example, I'll quickly show you in my this one. So if I look at the ls-al, I don't see any .git folder here because I'm in the directory of week 10 day. If I go two directories back and then if I do ls-al, you will see a .git folder. It is there in my root directory of my repository. It is not the root directory of the system. It is the root directory of the .git folder available in the root direct root root directory of the repository. Okay, any question?
So each repository will have a .git folder.
Exactly, that's correct. That's a good understanding. So inside you will have a configuration information. So this will contain information about your remote, what are the different branches available. So this we will slowly try to understand one by one. It's about where your remote repository that is available, whether it's in GitLab or GitHub, and what are the different branches available in your repository. All those information is to be stored locally so that whenever you do a push, it automatically detects where it has to go. That is why it is required. Otherwise, you'll have to maintain -u origin, some extra thing every time when you do a push. Okay, moving back to the slide. Any other questions you have? Okay. AWS S3 LS, AWS EC to describe instances. These are read operations or write operations?
Read operations.
Correct. These are read operations. S3 API create bucket is a
Right operation.
write operation. Basically, you're creating a resource. That means you're modifying something in the account. That means it's a write operation. For that, you should definitely have a permission. Sometimes, as I am user, or as a normal user, you will not have permission to modify or delete or create anything. You will have only the read permission. Most of the organizations will restrict your permissions to some extent. So you'll not be able to delete a bucket or create a bucket in that case. So for that, we'll have to see the IAM policies. IAM is nothing but identity and access management. It talks about different permissions, different policies that can be attached to the user. Policies and permissions that we'll take a look. One of the policies that we have seen so far is administrator access while you're creating your IAM user, correct?
Right.
Yeah. That, we chose administrator access because, we wanted to give the complete permission. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, I'll move on. So with respect to Terraform introduction, we saw how do we write or what is the format that we write the infrastructure code. That is HashiCorp configuration language. HashiCorp is the company which provides Terraform, which is developing Terraform. It's called HCL and it is very much similar to JSON. Similar to JSON, but only thing is you will not need to provide comma in the end of each line. That is only advantage. There is no comma. No comma in the end. Okay. And we'll need to understand what are the different um, stages in the um, Terraform workflow. Init is the first stage which will initialize all the plugins and connections to the resource to the cloud. Second one is validate to check your code syntactically, and then you will do a plan where you will understand what resources it will be created, but it will not create anything. And apply will create the resources for you. Destroy will remove all the resources whatever has been created. And here when you do apply, it creates a state file. It creates a TF state file. So that is the database for your resources that are created in the AWS cloud. So any questions on this one, this particular front? Whatever resources have been created, that will be stored in the Terraform state file.
So that state file is it state file? State file, right?
State.
State file. So what
It,
type of database is that?
it is simple text
Just
file.
text file. Okay.
It contains exactly whatever has been created in the AWS cloud or whatever has been created in any cloud. Okay. The one of the fundamental block that we will be writing is the provider block and resource block. The other blocks are, it depends on what is the kind of structure you're following. Based on that, you can write a variable block, you can write a data block, you can write a output block. So you require access key and secret key in your provider block if you have not configured your AWS CLI. So we have configured AWS CLI that you can verify using this one, cat telt.aws/credentials. Like that, you can see which region your AWS CLI or Terraform will work on. This also you can see that it is pointing to a particular region and what is the format output that you can get it.
This is what we did yesterday, no? Like
Yeah,
this.
you have done it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now so one of the other thing that you need to understand is your Terraform configuration file must be .tf extension. Something similar to .docx or .pdf like that. .tf extension is very much important for the Terraform configuration, Terraform files. And Terraform will refer only to the .tf files and read all those files and create the resources for you. Any questions on this? Okay. The architecture, I'll explain it. So you as a DevOps engineer, you will start writing the Terraform configuration file, the manifest files, and then you will do a different, you either store it in Git or locally. Most of the times it is stored in Git, not most of the times, it is always. See, only when you are doing some development locally, you store it in your local machine. Otherwise, it is stored in Git, and it goes through different stages like Terraform init, validate, plan, and apply. That time, based on the provider, whichever provider that you configured, based on that, it will contact the particular provider and create resources for you. And it will maintain a Terraform state file in which the information about the resources which are created will be stored. And when you run Terraform init, the first stage is init, right? In the init stage, it will create the necessary plugins, all the provided plugins for you on your local machine, in case you are running it locally. So there is one more thing, that is CI/CD pipeline. In the CI/CD pipeline, if it is a infrastructure CI/CD, we will not be using local execution. It will be through the GitLab CI. The first thing you need to understand is how to write Terraform code and execute it locally, then how to push it to Git repository, and how to execute from local machine itself, but maintain the repository. And the third thing is GitLab CI/CD. How to push all the resources to GitLab. From there, automatically pick up the changes and do a CI and CD. Any questions on this? Feel free to ask. Divya?
No, I don't have any questions.
Sure. Okay. So in case of CI/CD, GitLab CI/CD for infra, where the Terraform state file will be stored. Remote or local?
Local?
No, in case of CI/CD, it has to be stored in remote. It could be any storage that can be S3 or any other file system. We usually use S3. Just remember this because I mean when we move on to a different I mean different ways to store different ways to create the resources. When we move on, we'll be moving to GitLab CI. That time we'll be using S3 bucket for storing our state files.
Shankar, sorry. So the CI/CD, the Terraform will be stored in remote, you said, right? S3.
Correct. Remote storage.
Remote storage, which is an S3 bucket.
Your code will be stored in GitLab.
Okay, that I understood.
And your information about AWS resources will be stored in S3.
Okay, got it.
So every time when you run the pipeline, when you run Terraform plan or apply, it will go and refer to the S3 bucket and it will make necessary modifications. And then it will create resources or modify resources in AWS. And then ultimately, again, it'll update the S3 bucket information.
Bucket. Oh, okay.
Modified something. That is a work. So you have to remember this so that I mean when we come to CI/CD part, you will understand exactly how it is happening. So currently we are working on the local machine. Whatever we are going to do, it will be on the local machine. You will see a Terraform state file created on the local machine that gets updated every time when you run a Terraform apply or Terraform destroy. So there are only two cases where Terraform file will be updated. I mean state file will be updated. One is Terraform apply, another one is Terraform destroy. Not during the plan or init or validate. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, any confusions, get it cleared as early as possible. Divya?
I'm a little confused with the actual flow.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll take up one quick session, maybe later on tomorrow. I'll explain the same thing, but just try to recollect whatever I'm saying right now, so that when I do a picturization, you will be able to understand clearly.
Sure.
Here I'm unable to write all the pictures and then draw anything. I can use a draw note to even picturize it a little better.
Sure, no problem.
One thing is when you run without pipeline, it is stored in the local. If you run it on the pipeline, it will be stored in the remote. That's the only difference. State file. Okay, here this one we have seen pretty much many times. Init, validate, plan, apply, and destroy. What would happen if you run apply without plan? Any inputs? Feel free to answer. It's okay even if it is wrong.
It may have some errors or or the required output might not we will not receive the required output.
Okay, Divya.
Yeah, as she said, we may not get what we are desiring, like output, if we don't plan, or maybe we might miss some resources if we don't plan.
Yeah, see, to some extent that is true. We will not know exactly what it will be creating, but it will be just creating. There is no way it will fail. It will just go ahead and then create all the resources for you. There is no dependency on the plan. Plan is to just give you a general idea what it is going to do, but it is not going to stop you from running the apply. Clear?
Okay.
You may not understand what it is going to create before it is getting created. The only thing is plan will give you in advance what it is going to do so that you can make your decision based on that. Otherwise, there is no harm in doing apply directly. Here we'll be looking at what the provider block contains and how do we write different blocks. There are provider blocks, resource blocks, variable blocks, data blocks, and output blocks. So each block starts without any double quotes or single quotes. Each first column, it can be a resource block, it can be a data block. That should not be with the double quotes. That you should remember always while you are writing the code. Because the first one is all about Terraform. Is it a provider block? Is it a resource block? Or is it a variable block? Or is it a data block or output block? That block should not have any double quotes or single quotes. They're followed by argument that should always be with the double quotes. If you are if you are provisioning on AWS, it is AWS. If you are provisioning in Azure, it will be Azure. If you are providing something to Google Cloud, it will be GCP. Based on that, you'll have to provide the other parameters. In AWS Cloud, we are talking about region. In other cloud, it might be a different keyword if it is not region. And when you are creating a resource, it must be starting with the resource keyword and followed by resource name. In case of VPC, in case of instance, AWS underscore VPC or AWS underscore instance. And third is like your own wordings where you can mention my VPC, my instance, whatever you feel like that you can create it. The After the curly brace open, you should provide whatever required parameters in order to create that particular resource. Clear?
So are these provider resource variable data and output blocks like a keyword that Terraform recognizes what block we are writing?
Uh, can you repeat, Divya?
Are these like a provider resource variable data and output like keywords for Terraform to recognize what block we are writing?
Exactly. That's a keyword for Terraform. So we don't have more than 10, maximum is 10. Only that much we have with respect to the block name.
Okay.
It is pretty simple. You just need to only remember at least 4 or 5 things. Provider block, resource block, variable block, data block, and output block.
Okay. So these are the most used ones.
Correct. Yeah. If you look at this way, it is very easy to learn and do it. And you should know the exact syntax. See, if you're creating a VPC, what is required to create a VPC? For that, you should have some understanding on AWS Cloud, how to create a network resource, how to create an instance, how to create an S3 bucket, how to create an RDS instance. Like that, you should have a you should have some familiarity or at least some fundamentals. For that, you should definitely work on the AWS console, try to understand how to create a resource, how the same resource can be depicted from Terraform. What are the different parameters that are required to create that particular resource? All of those things you will understand. Okay, any more questions on this? Okay, so can somebody tell me what is var.secret underscore key? Divya?
So it is the secret key and access key that we used in credentials.
Okay, to some extent it is correct, but thing is, we'll be creating a variable block for this access key in with a variable keyword. So I'll show you in the next line. So he will be creating a variable block like this. This will be referring as var dot secret key, var dot access key. So dot Terraform file will be compiled by Terraform, and it will understand there is a variable called instance type, there is a variable called AMI ID is created. That variable, say for example, it's a data. Okay, here, if we say variable VPC name and default equals my VPC, that name you can refer it as var dot, where is it like, so var dot VPC. So here inside var dot VPC name tags equal to var dot VPC, like that you can mention. So basically wherever you have a dot, that means there is an object which is already created. That particular object you are referring to. Something similar to Python, right? Python you can define a variable, you can call that variable using a dot syntax. So here var is a object and VPC underscore cider is a attribute. For this particular object, there is an attribute that you are calling and then using it inside a different block. Is it clear?
Yeah.
So you'll slowly understand even a little better when you start writing the code. So here, how to call the object. Var.region AWS underscore instance dot my EC2 dot ID. So that means there is a resource that has been created already. There is a name of that, and ID is the output of your particular resource. ID, private IP, public IP, like that you can refer to all the attributes from the particular object.
So if I've created a variable block, var is always the object that I use to access the variables inside that block.
Correct, exactly. If you created a resource, it should be AWS underscore VPC dot your
Okay.
name
Uh,
of the resource dot your ID or your
oh.
IP address, something like that.
So whatever, like for example, AWS underscore VPC dot main underscore VPC dot tags.
Yeah, dot tags, dot ID. Yeah, like that you can refer to the other resources or get the output of the particular resource. Okay, moving on. With respect to the Terraform introduction, that's all I had. We can start writing the Terraform code right now. Are you guys fine to do it? Just wanted to check whether, hey
Yeah.
Sabir, when did you join? Hi, be louder.
Yeah. So I was here like 9, 12, 9, 15. I was
Okay,
some. Yeah. Yeah.
sure. Fine. I would like you to share your screen and start writing the basic Terraform code. I'll guide you through. We have another 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, so sure. So maybe let me share my screen.
Sure. Sabin, if you could, it is a background noise. It'll be good.
Sir, I have no control over this background noise. Like, yeah, it's happening, and I think there is some work on the road, right? Like, there's some pipe connection being installed. So,
Sure. Okay. No problem.
can I, if I had power, I would have went and asked them to stop.
Sure. See, what I'll do is I'll quickly show my screen and I can guide you through. You can directly do it on your terminal.
Yeah,
Just make sure you do the same thing.
yeah,
Go to
sir.
go to your export DevOps. You can get muted yourself for some time.
Yeah, sir. Sir, can I ask you one thing? Like Terraform, like where do we type these commands? Like, like, is it a separate application? I'm sorry, like, or is it like just? we type it on git bash.
Yeah, we type it on git bash. There is a way you can also do it from the notepad. I wouldn't suggest you to do it from the notepad because
Okay.
you will end up maybe using again the GUI interface or the basic interface very regularly. So that is not going to add value for you.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, just follow whatever I'm saying right now. It will be all right for you.
Sure, sir. I'll go on mute, like just so that I don't get disturbed. Yeah.
So just make sure you do a cd/export DevOps mkdir my-tf-test-1 cd my dash. If you have not done this yet, you just reply back. Otherwise, I'll assume that you have already done it, whatever I have done it so far. Simply write a provider.tf. Go inside, go to insert mode and start typing provider. The spelling has to be correct. Provider, AWS within the double quotes, open, then give two white space characters, region equals, just go with US East -1 for now. Close the curly braces. Save this file. Once you've done it to this extent, please make sure you reply back to me. I'll run the Terraform init, or you can also run Terraform init. You're just writing a provider block which says it will be connecting to AWS, it will be working with the AWS cloud, and it will be working on the AWS region, that is US East 1. Clear?
So do we start it from, vim provider.tf?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Now, okay. Divya, have you done it?
Yeah, almost. I'm writing the provider file.
Okay. So, Atulya?
Yes, I am trying to it was a bit speed. I am trying to note down.
It's okay. So I'll just quickly show it what it does. Say I'll say ls-al, right? I don't see anything other than provider.tf. When I do a Terraform init, it will create a .terraform folder where it will store the plugin configuration, other connection details to AWS Cloud. This will see it after it is completed. Meantime, I'll ask you to share your screen one by one. Hey, Satish. It's okay. We'll have a follow-up session, or you can also see the recordings.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Atulya, can you share your screen? I'll stop the recording for now.